3 days. That was all it took for Mikhail Volkov to bury the 3 men he had trusted with his life. They weren't inexperienced guards. They were elite professionals who had protected him through gang wars, assassination attempts, and betrayals that had destroyed rival crime families. Yet every one of them died the same way. Not because the enemy was stronger, because the enemy already knew exactly where Mikhail would be. Standing over 3 freshly covered graves, Mikhail reached a conclusion that terrified even his closest advisors. The greatest threat wasn't the gun pointed at him. It was the routine everyone expected him to follow. The next morning, his advisors presented a list of former Special Forces operators, decorated military veterans, and internationally respected security experts. Mikhail closed the folder without reading past the first page. Find me someone nobody would ever expect me to hire. 24 hours later, the conference room fell silent as a quiet, plus-size woman in a simple black suit walked through the door, carrying nothing but a slim case file. Several veteran bodyguards exchanged amused smiles. One muttered that she looked completely out of place. Naomi Hayes never acknowledged them. While everyone else was looking at her, she was already studying every exit, every camera, every reflection in the room. No one noticed, except Mikhail. And before the day was over, the woman nobody believed belonged there would become the only reason the most feared mafia boss in Russia was still alive. The conference room stayed silent long after Naomi Hayes walked through the door. No one stood to greet her. No one offered a handshake. Most of the men simply stared, not because they recognized her name, because they couldn't understand why Mikhail Volkov had chosen her. She wasn't tall. She wasn't heavily built. She carried no tactical backpack, no assault rifle, and none of the expensive gear usually displayed by elite protection specialists. In a plain black suit with her dark hair tied neatly behind her head, she looked more like a corporate employee than someone expected to stand between a mafia boss and a bullet. Several guards exchanged knowing smiles. One quietly leaned toward another. She'll quit before the week is over. Naomi acted as though she hadn't heard a word. Instead of introducing herself, she slowly walked around the room. Not aimlessly, deliberately. She paused beside every window, looked briefly at every security camera, measured the distance between the conference table and the emergency exits. Then she stopped beside the coffee station. "What are you looking for?" one guard asked with an amused grin. Naomi picked up a porcelain cup, turned it once in her hand, and placed it back exactly where it had been. "Habits," she answered. The room fell quiet for a moment. Before anyone could ask what she meant, she moved on. Mikhail watched the exchange without saying a single word. Unlike everyone else, he wasn't watching where Naomi walked. He was watching what she noticed. After several minutes, Naomi returned to the table. "I'd like to make a few changes." A veteran commander folded his arms. "You've been here less than 5 minutes. I know. And you're already changing our security plan. I'm changing your assumptions." That answer earned another wave of laughter. Naomi waited until the room settled. The front entrance is used too often. The security cameras above the west hallway overlap each other, leaving a blind angle near the elevators. The reception desk blocks the fastest evacuation route. She pointed toward a decorative marble planter. "And that should be moved." The commander frowned. "It's a flower. It's solid stone," Naomi replied calmly. "If someone opens fire from the lobby, it becomes cover." No one laughed this time, not because they agreed, because none of them had ever thought about it. One of the younger guards shrugged. Maybe she's been lucky. Naomi didn't argue. She simply continued. The mirrors in the lobby reflect anyone entering through the main doors. She looked at Mikhail. "You don't need to turn around to know who's behind you." For the first time, Mikhail nodded. "Move the planter." The commander hesitated. "Sir, move it." Within minutes, maintenance staff rolled the heavy planter to its new position. The room watched in silence. A simple change. Yet somehow, it made the lobby noticeably easier to defend. That afternoon, Naomi inspected the vehicle garage. She asked for maintenance records instead of weapon inventories. She checked tire pressure before checking ammunition. She counted spare keys. She tested emergency door releases. Every mechanic she spoke to looked confused. One finally asked why she cared more about small details than rifles. Naomi smiled faintly. People prepare for dramatic attacks. She closed the hood of an armored SUV. They usually forget ordinary failures. As the day went on, whispers spread through headquarters. Some still believed Mikhail had made a terrible mistake. Others quietly admitted that the new bodyguard noticed things experienced operators ignored. Late that evening, most of the building had emptied. Naomi remained alone in the security control room. She replayed surveillance footage from earlier that morning. Again and again. Not searching for faces, searching for patterns. Then something caught her attention. At exactly 8:17 a.m., a delivery driver entered the lobby. He stayed only 12 seconds. He never delivered a package. He never approached reception. He simply looked around and left. Naomi froze the image, zoomed in, printed the frame. She slipped the photograph into a folder without saying a word. Outside the control room, Mikhail had been watching through the glass for several minutes. He didn't interrupt. He simply noticed the same thing he had noticed all day. While everyone else had been trying to judge Naomi, Naomi had been trying to understand the people who were watching him. And somewhere beyond the walls of Volkov headquarters, someone had already begun watching her. By sunrise the following morning, Volkov headquarters had returned to its usual rhythm. Drivers inspected armored vehicles. Security teams checked radios. Office staff hurried through the marble lobby, carrying coffee and stacks of paperwork. To everyone else, it looked like another ordinary day. To Naomi, it looked rehearsed. She stood near the lobby windows with a clipboard, saying almost nothing. She wasn't watching people. She was watching patterns. At 8:05 a.m., the same flower delivery truck from yesterday drove past the building. It didn't stop. At 8:11, a maintenance van parked across the street. The workers never got out. At 8:17, another courier entered the lobby, wearing the same company uniform Naomi had seen in the surveillance footage the night before. Different face, same logo, same route. He looked around once, then quietly left. No delivery, no signature, nothing. Naomi wrote down the time. Exactly 12 seconds. Again. She closed the notebook. That wasn't coincidence anymore. It was surveillance. She walked directly into the security office. Pull every camera covering the east side of the building from the last 48 hours. A technician frowned. For what? I want every vehicle that stopped for less than 30 seconds. Another guard overheard the request and laughed. You think someone's studying us? Naomi answered without looking up. I know they are. The room became noticeably quieter. Minutes later, the footage filled the monitors. One truck, 2 vans, 3 different couriers, different drivers. Different license plates, the same stopping point, the same 12-second pause. Naomi circled every frame with a marker. They're measuring visibility. One technician leaned closer. They're checking the cameras. No, she shook her head. They're checking his routine. At that moment, Mikhail entered the room. No one noticed except Naomi. She simply handed him the photographs. He studied them in silence. You found this overnight. I found enough. He looked at the repeated timestamps, then at the identical stopping position. Finally, he looked out the window. For the first time, he saw the street the way Naomi saw it. not as traffic, as preparation. "Cancel today's schedule," Naomi said. Several commanders protested immediately. "Impossible! We have meetings. The governors are already waiting." Mikhail asked only one question. "If you wanted to kill me," Naomi answered before he finished, "I wouldn't attack during a meeting. I'd attack while everyone was focused on getting you there." The room fell silent. Mikhail slowly closed the folder. "We leave." One commander blinked. "I thought you said, 'We leave.'" He turned toward Naomi. "You choose the route." It was the first operational decision he had ever delegated to someone outside his inner circle. Naomi unfolded a city map. She ignored every route highlighted by the security team. Instead, she drew a new line through narrower streets. "It adds 6 minutes. It removes every location where someone has already studied your habits." The convoy departed just after 10. No sirens. No unnecessary speed, only quiet movement. Inside the lead SUV, several veteran guards still believed the new route was excessive. One removed his headset for a few seconds while complaining about the change. Naomi noticed. She said nothing. She simply remembered. The convoy entered an older industrial district. Traffic slowed unexpectedly. Construction barriers narrowed the road into a single lane. The lead driver sighed. "I knew this would happen." Naomi looked ahead. Fresh asphalt. Brand new warning signs. Construction equipment. Everything appeared normal. Then she noticed something that didn't belong. The road workers were wearing clean boots. No dust. No wet concrete. No tools had been used. She leaned forward. "Reverse." The driver stared at her. "What?" "Reverse. Now." There wasn't time to explain. Mikhail looked once through the windshield. He trusted her. "Do it." The armored sedan lurched backward. The convoy scrambled to follow. Less than 2 seconds later, the construction barriers exploded upward. A hidden charge ripped through the pavement, sending steel plates and shattered concrete into the air. The blast swallowed the exact spot where Mikhail's vehicle had been heading. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then every radio erupted. "Ambush! Protect the boss!" Gunfire cracked from the rooftops. This time, Naomi didn't look toward the explosion. She was already searching for the real attack. Because the explosion had never been meant to kill Mikhail. It had been designed to stop him. And somewhere nearby, someone was waiting for the convoy to panic. Smoke still drifted above the shattered intersection as emergency crews rushed toward the blast site. Most of Volkov's security team did exactly what years of training had taught them. They ran toward the explosion. Naomi didn't. She stood perfectly still, studying everything except the fire. One of the senior guards shouted at her, "Aren't you going to help?" Without taking her eyes off the street, she answered quietly, "If I wanted him dead, the explosion wouldn't be the weapon." The guard frowned. "What are you talking about?" "The explosion is where they want us to look." Only then did Mikhail notice that Naomi wasn't watching the flames. She was watching everyone who wasn't. A white delivery truck was slowly leaving the next block. Construction workers were already abandoning their tools. A man in a gray jacket crossed the street, without once turning to look at the chaos behind him. Normal people looked back. He didn't. Naomi raised her radio. "Block every bridge heading east." One commander protested immediately. "They'll scatter." "No." She shook her head. "Professionals don't run in panic. They disappear." Within minutes, police checkpoints sealed the eastern exits from the district. The delivery truck was found abandoned less than 20 minutes later. Inside, investigators discovered fresh work gloves, forged identification badges, and a detailed map of Mikhail's usual travel routes. Nothing connected the vehicle to its driver. Everything inside had been carefully wiped clean. As forensic teams searched the truck, Naomi quietly walked around it alone. She crouched beside the rear tire. Then she touched the dried mud stuck inside the wheel well. This wasn't driven through the city. An investigator looked confused. The soil contains fresh cement dust. She stood. It came from an active construction site. Within the hour, security teams identified the unfinished building where the explosives had been assembled. The attackers were already gone, but they had left behind one important truth. Someone had known exactly which route Mikhail was supposed to take. Back at headquarters, the atmosphere had changed. No one laughed when Naomi entered the room. The same men who had mocked her yesterday now watched her with cautious respect. Not because she had fought anyone, because she had seen what they had all missed. Late that evening, Mikhail found Naomi alone in the security office. She was replacing every route map by hand. "You should get some rest," he said. "So should you. I've learned to function without it." Naomi didn't answer. As she reached for another file, the sleeve of her jacket slipped back just enough to reveal a faded scar across her wrist. It wasn't the scar that caught Mikhail's attention. It was her reaction. She pulled the sleeve down almost instantly, as if hiding something she never wanted anyone to see. "You've been injured before." Naomi continued organizing the files. "Everyone in this profession has. You don't sleep much either." "I sleep enough." He knew she was lying. Security reports showed she had walked every floor of headquarters 3 separate times the previous night. Always alone, always checking the exits, always ending her patrol in the same place, outside his office. After a long silence, Mikhail spoke again. "Who taught you to protect people like this?" Naomi stopped moving. For several seconds, she said nothing. Finally, without turning around, she answered, "Someone who isn't alive anymore." That was all. No explanation, no story. Just one sentence, heavy enough to end the conversation. After Naomi left, Mikhail remained standing in the empty office. Then he picked up the secure phone on his desk. "I want everything we have on Naomi Hayes." His intelligence chief hesitated. "There isn't much. Find the rest." Less than an hour later, a classified file arrived. Most of the pages had been blacked out, names removed, locations erased, entire paragraphs sealed under federal authorization. Only a few lines remained readable. Mission status completed. Protectee survived. Personal loss severe. Case file permanently restricted. Mikhail stared at the final page for a long time. Then his eyes stopped on one last entry. Family relation redacted. Before he could read further, the lights inside headquarters flickered. At the exact same moment, every security monitor went black. Emergency generators restored power less than 30 seconds after the blackout. The lights returned. The elevators restarted. The surveillance screens flickered back to life. Everything appeared normal. Except it wasn't. One of the cybersecurity analysts rushed into the operations room, carrying a laptop. "They didn't shut down our cameras." Mikhail looked up. They copied the server. Every security recording from the previous 48 hours had been downloaded during the blackout. Vehicle routes, radio frequencies, building layouts, emergency procedures. Someone hadn't come to destroy Volkov headquarters. Someone had come to learn it. Silence settled across the room. Mikhail slowly turned toward Naomi. "You were right." She didn't answer. She was already reviewing access logs. There. She pointed at one entry. The download started 8 seconds before the power failed. The analyst frowned. "That's impossible." "No." Naomi calmly shook her head. "It means whoever did this already had access. The room fell silent again. An outsider couldn't have entered the system that quickly. Someone inside the organization had opened the door. For the first time since taking the job, Naomi looked genuinely troubled. Not because someone wanted Mikhail dead, because someone standing beside him wanted him dead. Over the next several days, Mikhail cancelled every public appearance. Instead of hiding inside his office, he spent most of his time walking the building with Naomi. They inspected loading docks, emergency exits, rooftops, maintenance tunnels. They rarely spoke. They didn't need to. For the first time in years, Mikhail found himself working beside someone who noticed problems before he did. One evening, they stopped outside the employee cafeteria. A young janitor accidentally dropped an entire tray of dishes. The loud crash echoed through the hallway. Every guard instinctively reached for a weapon. Naomi didn't. She froze. Only for a second. But Mikhail saw it. Her breathing changed. Her eyes lost focus. She wasn't looking at the broken dishes anymore. She was somewhere else. Somewhere years in the past. The moment passed almost immediately. Naomi knelt, helped the embarrassed janitor gather the broken plates, quietly asked if he was hurt, then continued walking as though nothing had happened. Mikhail said nothing until much later. That sound. Naomi kept looking ahead. It reminded you of something. She remained silent. He didn't press further. Instead, he handed her a small paper cup of coffee from a vending machine. You've been awake for almost 20 hours. I'll sleep later. You always say that. For the first time since they met. Naomi smiled. It wasn't a big smile, just enough to soften the weight she constantly carried. It usually works. Mikhail looked at her for a long moment. You spend every minute protecting other people. But nobody seems to be protecting you. The smile disappeared. Naomi lowered her eyes. There was someone. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I couldn't protect him. That night, after Naomi finally left headquarters, Mikhail reopened her classified file. This time, he ignored the redacted pages. He searched archived court records, emergency dispatch logs, and local newspaper databases. Piece by piece, the missing story came together. 3 years earlier, Naomi had successfully evacuated a businessman during an assassination attempt. Her mission had not failed. The client had survived. The person who died wasn't the protectee. It was her younger brother. He had stepped between the assassin's bullet and the man Naomi had been assigned to protect. The official investigation called him an innocent bystander. The confidential report called him a civilian casualty. Naomi called him family. She had resigned 6 weeks later. Not because she had failed her mission, because she couldn't forgive herself for the life that mission had taken. Mikhail quietly closed the file. For the first time, he understood why Naomi never accepted praise, why she never celebrated success, why she treated every assignment as though one mistake could destroy an entire world. Outside his office, footsteps echoed down the hallway. One of his oldest security commanders entered without knocking. There is something you need to see. He placed a tablet on the desk. The screen displayed security footage from the morning of the ambush. A single frame had been enhanced. One man was removing his communication earpiece, just seconds before the attack began. It was the same veteran commander who had mocked Naomi on her first day. The enhanced footage played in complete silence, frame by frame. The veteran security commander reached to his ear. He removed his communication earpiece. 7 seconds later, the ambush began. No one in the room spoke. The commander had served Mikhail for 11 years. He had attended family funerals, negotiated peace between rival syndicates, taken bullets for the organization. He was the last man anyone expected to betray them. Mikhail looked at Naomi. You noticed. She nodded once. The first day. Why didn't you accuse him? Evidence earns trust. Suspicion destroys it. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Mikhail closed the laptop. Bring him to me. The commander never arrived. His office was empty. His phone had been destroyed. His security badge had already been used to unlock a service exit less than 10 minutes earlier. He wasn't running. He had been extracted. Naomi unfolded a city map across the operations table. She circled an abandoned freight terminal near the river. He won't meet the people paying him. He'll meet the people who promised to protect him. Mikhail studied the map only briefly. Then he ordered every available team to move. This time, Naomi rode beside him. No arguments, no protests, only complete trust. Rain poured over the deserted freight yard. Shipping containers formed narrow corridors between rusted cranes. Too quiet. Naomi stepped from the vehicle first. Her eyes moved constantly. Doors, windows, rooftops, reflections. Then she stopped. They're waiting. Gunfire erupted from both sides. The first wave wasn't aimed at Mikhail. It targeted his security teams. The attackers wanted to separate him from everyone else, exactly as Naomi had predicted. Smoke grenades filled the yard. Radio communication collapsed. Visibility disappeared. Somewhere inside the smoke, a familiar voice echoed. You always were too loyal, Naomi. Viktor Sokolov stepped into view. Beside him stood the missing commander. Neither man pointed a weapon. They didn't need to. A sniper already had Mikhail in his sights. Viktor smiled. You spent your whole life protecting people. And every time, you lost someone. Naomi didn't answer. You couldn't save your brother. You couldn't save your career. And today, you won't save him either. For just a moment, the old guilt returned. The memories, the gunshot. Her brother falling, the unbearable silence afterward. Then another voice cut through the rain. Quiet, steady. Mikhail, Naomi. She looked toward him. You don't owe the past another life. Everything seemed to stop. The fear, the guilt, the years she had spent blaming herself. For the first time, she believed him. The sniper fired. Without hesitation, Naomi stepped into the bullet's path. The impact threw her backward. She collapsed onto the wet concrete. No! Mikhail's voice echoed across the yard. The man who never showed fear charged forward through gunfire. His remaining security teams followed. Within seconds, Viktor's men were overwhelmed. The sniper was captured alive. The traitorous commander surrendered. Viktor attempted to escape. He never reached the gate. When the shooting finally stopped, Mikhail dropped to one knee beside Naomi. Blood spread across her jacket. She looked up at him. I'm sorry. I almost failed again. Mikhail gently shook his head. No. His voice broke for the first time in years. You kept your promise. And this time, so did I. He pressed both hands against her wound while shouting for the medical team. I am not losing you. Not today. Not after everything you've survived. The ambulance doors closed. Naomi's hand remained in his until the very last second. Weeks later, the investigation exposed a network of corruption reaching deep inside the organization. Every remaining conspirator disappeared. The freight terminal was demolished. The old security division was rebuilt from the ground up. Under Naomi's protocols, people still called Mikhail the most feared mafia boss in Russia. But inside Volkov headquarters, something had changed. No one laughed when Naomi entered a room. No one questioned her judgment. And no one was surprised that the chair beside Mikhail at every strategy meeting remained permanently reserved. Not because she had taken a bullet for him. Because she had given him something no empire, no fortune, and no army ever could. Someone he could trust with his life. Long before Mikhail ever admitted he loved Naomi Hayes, everyone else already knew.